Open your phone right now and think about where your data actually lives. It sits in a massive warehouse, humming with thousands of servers in a data center somewhere, and China just got caught running a disinformation campaign specifically designed to make American voters and politicians despise those buildings. Fake Chinese accounts flooded social media with false claims. Data centers damage the environment. They poison local water supplies. They drain power grids and cause health problems in nearby neighborhoods. But here's the thing, their goal wasn't random chaos. It was surgical. They wanted to slow down America's AI development by poisoning public opinion against the infrastructure that makes it all possible. This is information warfare in the AI era, and it's way more sophisticated than the election meddling we saw a decade ago. The old playbook was simple: spread political division. Make Americans distrust each other. The new playbook targets the physical infrastructure itself. If you can turn voters against data centers, you slow down American chip makers, AI researchers, and cloud companies. You don't even need to hack anything or steal secrets. You just need to make building the future politically toxic. And here's the twist nobody expected. These aren't clumsy propaganda operations anymore. To understand why China would target data centers, you need to understand what they actually do. A modern data center isn't just a place where computers sit. It's the backbone of everything digital. Every AI model that learns from billions of examples, every cloud service that stores your photos, every company training the next generation of artificial intelligence, they all depend on data centers. America currently dominates this space. We've got over 8,000 data centers globally, and about 40% of the world's cloud computing power runs through American infrastructure. China knows this, which is why they are desperate to slow us down. Training a single advanced AI model can require as much electricity as a small city. Building new data centers is expensive. We are talking tens of billions of dollars, and it's politically contentious. Local communities worry about environmental impact, power grid strain, and even fictional health effects. So China's strategy is brilliant in its simplicity: amplify those real concerns, add false ones, and seed them across social media, where algorithms spread them like wildfire. If they can make Americans vote against data center construction permits, they've essentially put a speed bump on American AI advancement without firing a shot. That's why this campaign isn't just about spreading lies. It's infrastructure sabotage through information. OpenAI's researchers discovered something fascinating. The fake accounts didn't just post random conspiracy theories. They were organized, targeted, and specifically designed to infiltrate local community conversations. The operation started with accounts that looked authentic: profile pictures, activity history, follow accounts, all the markers of real people. Then they'd identify towns where data center expansion projects were planned. In these communities, they'd amplify environmental concerns that were already real. A town worried about water usage, the fake accounts would post exaggerated claims about data centers draining local aquifers. A neighborhood concerned about electricity rates, they'd share posts claiming data centers were spiking power costs. The genius part was mixing legitimate concerns with false ones so seamlessly that fact-checkers struggled to keep up. They targeted multiple platforms: X, Facebook, TikTok, Reddit. They created local community groups and pages. They even engaged with real local activists, appearing to be neighbors who shared their concerns. The scale was significant too. We are talking hundreds of accounts, thousands of posts spread across months, and they were sophisticated enough to pivot their messaging based on local issues. In one town, they emphasized environmental damage. In another, they focused on property values. Each campaign felt local, authentic, and tailor-made. This wasn't a generic anti-America operation. It was precision targeting of America's physical infrastructure. Here's what the fake accounts were actually saying on the ground. In communities considering new data center builds, they posted variations of the same narrative. Data centers consume 40 times more water than a traditional power plant per megawatt. That's exaggerated. The real number is more like 3 times in some cases. Tech companies don't pay their fair share of local property taxes. They'd share local tax filing screenshots, real ones, but with misleading captions, claiming companies were avoiding billions in obligations. They'd post before and after photos, some real, some doctored, showing environmental damage in towns that hosted data centers. They'd claim people were getting sick from radiation from data center electronics. They'd say AI training was directly responsible for water shortages in drought-stricken areas. One particularly effective narrative was about property values. Your home is worth 30% less if you live near a data center. Not true, but when you see that posted by what looks like a local homeowner with photos of their property, you start to wonder. They'd even pose as environmental activists and journalists, lending credibility to the false claims. The psychological trick was brilliant. They didn't invent all these concerns from nothing. They took real, legitimate worries that communities have about industrial development and then weaponized them with false specificity, turning reasonable caution into organized opposition. China's data center campaign is part of a much larger pattern of state-sponsored influence operations, but it's notably different from what Russia did in 2016. Russia's election interference was blunt force trauma, post divisive political content, create chaos, get Americans fighting each other. China's approach is more surgical. They're not trying to make America dysfunctional. They're trying to make specific strategic targets impossible to build. Russia went after political identity. China goes after infrastructure. We saw similar infrastructure-focused operations before. Russian influence networks have targeted U.S. power grid conversations, wind farm construction, and mining operations, anything that might slow down American economic development. But China's campaign against data centers is more sophisticated because it's targeting something so essential to the future. Every AI breakthrough, every new cloud service, every computational advancement, all flow through data centers. It's like the difference between sabotaging an army and sabotaging the factory that builds the army's weapons. The success rate matters too. Russia's election interference certainly affected American sentiment, but it's hard to point to one policy that directly resulted from their efforts. China's campaign, though, we can already see the effect. Permits are getting delayed in multiple states. Communities are organizing against data center projects. Politicians are getting pressure from constituents who have absorbed these false narratives. That's the difference between generic influence operations and infrastructure warfare. One makes you angry at politicians. The other makes you vote to stop things that matter strategically. Let's be clear about what's at stake. America's advantage in artificial intelligence isn't magical. It's built on computational power. Computational power requires data centers. Data centers require massive amounts of capital, electricity, and land requires community support. If China can systematically poison community opinion against data center construction, they're essentially setting speed limits on American AI development. While America delays data center permits because of environmental lawsuits and local opposition based on false information, China is building data centers at breakneck speed. They've got fewer democratic constraints. They don't need a town hall vote, but they are also aware that America has those constraints and are actively exploiting them. The economic impact is real. Every month a data center project is delayed adds millions to the cost. Every project that gets cancelled means less computing capacity, and computing capacity is what determines who leads in AI. OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Meta, they're all competing for more data center capacity. If any of them can't build fast enough because of community opposition based on false narratives, they lose the race. But here's what's even more concerning. This is proof that China has figured out how to weaponize American democracy itself. They're not attacking us militarily. They're not hacking our systems. They're using our own open discourse against us. They're counting on the fact that Americans believe in local democracy and environmental protection, and they're exploiting those values to delay critical infrastructure. If this succeeds, other countries will notice. India might start targeting U.S. wind farm construction. Russia might launch campaigns against semiconductor manufacturing facilities. And suddenly, America's democratic processes become a vulnerability rather than a strength. So what happens now? OpenAI's research was shared with law enforcement and platform companies, and the response has been swift. Meta, X, and TikTok removed thousands of accounts involved in the campaign. They deployed their misinformation detection systems to identify similar operations before they gained traction. But here's the honest truth. By the time platforms catch and remove accounts, the damage is often already done. The false narratives are already in local Facebook groups. They've already influenced community discussions. They've already shaped opinion. That's why the real solution is more complex. Tech platforms are getting better at detecting coordinated, inauthentic behavior, networks of fake accounts amplifying the same messages. But they are also aware they have to be careful not to over-censor or suppress legitimate criticism. A data center expansion genuinely can have environmental impacts. A community genuinely can have concerns about local costs. The trick is distinguishing between real concerns amplified by locals and false narratives seeded by foreign operations. Some solutions being discussed: more transparency about who runs accounts, stronger authentication requirements, better tools for communities to verify information. But individuals also have responsibility here. If you see a claim about data centers or any technology online, check the source. Look at the account history. Does it feel authentic? Has this account been active for years or just suddenly appear to discuss one topic? Talk to local fact-checkers. Read the original sources. And here's the key: be skeptical of any narrative that feels too perfectly aligned with your existing beliefs. That's exactly the moment foreign influence operations are most effective. Here's what you need to understand. This isn't a one-off incident. This is the new normal of great power competition. China, Russia, and other countries have learned that they don't need to invade America or hack critical infrastructure. They just need to use our own systems against us. And they're getting really good at it. The data center campaign shows just how targeted these operations can become. They're not trying to make Americans angry about America in general. They're trying to slow down specific industries by poisoning specific communities against specific projects. It's surgical, it's effective, and it's happening right now. For you as a viewer, the practical lesson is this: the information you see online about controversial infrastructure projects, policy debates, and geopolitical issues might have been placed there by a foreign government trying to steer America in a particular direction. That doesn't mean you should distrust all information. It means you should be more discerning. Check sources, look for coordinated patterns, and understand that when thousands of accounts suddenly appear to share one narrative, that's a red flag. For the tech industry, the stakes are clear. Companies like OpenAI and others need to build faster, but they also need to do it smarter politically. Engage communities early and honestly. Invest in local infrastructure, education, and environmental protection. Prove through action that the false narratives are false, because China's strategy only works if Americans distrust tech companies and fear their own local future. Make that untrue through transparency and results. The broader point: America's strength has always been open discourse and democratic participation. But those same qualities make us vulnerable to information warfare. Understanding that vulnerability isn't pessimism, it's realism. Stay skeptical, stay informed, and hold both tech companies and your own leaders accountable. That's how you win an information war.